Welcome to 7 Secrets to Managerial Success. I'm Julie Mathern with Business Coaching of Northern California and Focal Point Coaching and Training Excellence. This is our agenda for today's webinar. We'll have some introductory remarks. We'll work through the 7 secrets. We'll have some conclusions and summary, and a special bonus offer for those of you that are participating in a live event. A couple of logistical notes. We are recording this session, and we will make the presentation available to those of you participating. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to share, please use the chat window at the lower portion of your screen. This is me. I'm Julie Mathern. I'm one of the coaches at Focal Point Business Coaching. I'm in Northern California. I'm also a corporate trainer, and I've been working with businesses and teams to help them drive profitability and productivity for several years now. Part of the work that I do is helping teams communicate better, also helping them create some disciplines around effectiveness and their growth and leadership. Next, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. This is my colleague, Jim Sackman. And Jim has been with Focal Point longer than I have. He's a former CTO in the telecom industry. He's got over 30 years of corporate experience. You can see his resume here. And has been working with small business owners and large business owners for many years. We'd like to take a moment to learn a little bit more about you, our audience, and see where you're at in your leadership. So let's launch a little poll. We'd love to hear from you. You should see a poll and ask you to click which of these reflects your years of experience. We'll give you about 15 seconds to respond. So for the audience, please take a moment to reply to our leadership experience poll. And I'll give you a couple more moments to respond, and then we will share the results. Hopefully you can all see the poll. All right. All right, Jim, do you see our poll?
I do.
All right.
So it seems like we got a pretty good mix of people of different experiences and different skill levels in management and leadership. So what I'd like to do is start talking about what we're going to try to accomplish today. And my name is Jim Sackman, and I appreciate Julie for introducing me. And thank you for taking the time to talk with us about the 7 secrets of managerial success. Now, I always have objectives that I'm going to get people to try to accomplish before the end of any presentation or workshop or webinar that I do. And so I have objectives for you today. And the first one is an introduction to the 7 secrets. Now, each of these different areas is a topic unto itself, but you know, we have a limited time today, so it's more of an introduction to each topic, and you can always explore them deeper at a later time. The second one is to self-identify gaps in leadership. Many of you, all of you should have taken the test already, or the little quiz we had up online, which was a self-assessment in leadership. And I want to help you understand gaps that you may or may not have recognized as part of that assessment. And finally, I'd like you to get at least one new tool for yourself to be able to deal with. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of this whole thing. So there you go. Let me say that I want to remind you that you're spending time here. So I'm hoping that you have expectations of yourself and expectations of the webinar. So if you've got any, and especially if there's some interesting, Julie will share them with us, and we'll go from there. And if you could put answers to that question in the chat room, what you're expecting to learn from this webinar, that would be most helpful. And while we'll do that, we're going to move on to our 7 secrets of success in managerial type success. And the first one is become an exceptional person. And we're going to cover these each in more detail as we go on. But I want to introduce the 7 secrets first, go through each one, give you a bit of color on each one. And the very first one is to become an exceptional person. So that's something where it's interesting to figure out how to become, really a top-notch person in a field. Second one is leading by example, and that's something that that is very key to the way people respond to you and your leadership style. The third one is to define your key results areas. And what that means is coming up with real understanding of what you're accountable for to the organization. Setting clear standards of performance. Now, this is the important part here is that if you're not clear of what the standard that people are supposed to do, then how do they know that you're objectively measuring them accurately? Concentrate your powers. So how do we make sure we're working on the right things? Leverage your effectiveness. How do you know that you're that time that you're spending is producing the greatest amount of productivity? And then finally, effective delegation, which is one of the tools associated with leveraging your effectiveness. So we're going to start off with focusing on you and your leadership style, and that's encapsulated really in the 2 secrets. One is becoming an exceptional person, and the second one is leading by example. So we'll start with what it means to become an exceptional person, and this means an exceptional person in your area of expertise, whatever that is. So if you want to become an exceptional person, there's a whole bunch of attributes that you need to be exemplifying on an everyday basis. The first one is a winning attitude, and one of the things that's different about Focal Point and the way we operate is we teach something called the Carnegie Triangle. And if you've ever heard of Andrew Carnegie, one of his core values was that attitude and your ability to execute really led to success. So if you don't have a winning attitude, you will not succeed. Courage to take risks. If you don't take any risks, you will get no reward. So you've got to be able to do things which are outside the norm, things that are different than everybody else. By doing that, you will have set yourself apart from and above your competition, others in your field, so that you are viewed as an expert in what you do. Now, being accountable to me encompasses 2 things. One is that your actions and your plans, you report on them and you're honest about where you are. And that integrity part of it is very key. Without integrity in accountability, being able to look at yourself and say, I've done well, I've done poorly, how are we going to execute a business plan without being accountable, without being having integrity around what we do. So if you don't understand that people view you and your actions and the way that you go about them, that's a real problem. And then the final one is to learn every day. Even though attitude, if you look at a Carnegie system, is the key, knowledge and expertise is the other half of the equation, the other percentage of the equation. And by continuing to learn, which is one of the reasons I hope you're here, and doing other things in your life as well, taking continuous education, exploring different fields, looking outside yourself and at competitors and at other people, other choices within the community, then you continue to grow. So that will, by taking that knowledge, being accountable to your staff, your shareholders, your customers, taking risk to deliver the best, and knowing that you're going to deliver the best, that is the way to become exceptional. Exceptional in your field, exceptional as a leader. And I think Henry Ford said it best, which is, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So I'm sure you've heard that before in different contexts, but it works in business, it works in sports, it works in almost any activity. Your own self-belief drives your ability to win. So the second half of that equation is you've got to lead by example. Now, what does that mean in this kind of context? First off, you need to hold yourself to high standards. Your goal needs to be, I am one of the most excellent people in what I do in my industry, not just the best in my company, not just the best in my area, but the best in the world, right? That should be your expectation for yourself. Now, if you hold yourself to high standards, then people around you will hold themselves to high standards as well. Inspect what you expect. What that means is people notice what you pay attention to. So if you want to make sure that there's high quality, if you're measuring quality, then people will deliver high quality because they want you to know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if you really care about something, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to it on a regular basis, having measurements around it, having meetings about it, having reviews, whatever it takes. You keep your eye on the ball and make sure that you're inspecting what you expect. Act as you expect everyone to act. Now, if that means you really want people to show up early, or you want them to work hard and be very kind to customers, whatever it is, however you want them to act, you need to be able to do that. You need to exemplify that behavior. So putting a mission, vision, and value statement together and then not performing in exactly that way doesn't work. To me, it's all about this last statement, which is alignment, making compliance into alignment. And compliance means, hey, yeah, okay, that's right, I should be a good guy. Alignment is, I believe in what we're doing. So you want everybody to believe and act the same way. That's the way to build a great company, is that people see you acting in a certain way, exemplifying that behavior, walking your talk, and making their compliance, I acknowledge that you're the boss and you're paying me, into the willingness for them to want to act. Now, I've done that in the past by taking some of the people that were most in compliance and showing them what alignment could do for them, how it can make their career better, how it can make their job better, by taking a step back and showing them, hey, you can actually do your job better, you can make more money, you can have a better life if you align with us instead of just being in compliance. So you got to focus on what important, and most importantly is walk your talk. You've got to exemplify that behavior. Now, I think all of us at some point have seen bosses that have talked out of both sides of their mouth, where they say, this is what I think, and act in another way. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you know of any examples of that. And I'm going to give you one out of my past while you're thinking about that. I was at a company meeting where the CEO stood up and said, we're going to be the most ethical player in the industry. And the next thing, I was asked by my boss to work with a company, and I said, hey, I know that, believe it or not, many of the people in this company are not, they're not upright. In fact, several of them are convicted felons in stock fraud. Do you really want us to partner with them? And they said, oh, yeah. So I could see right there that they didn't really mean what they said, that they were willing to work with whoever, even though they set a very high ethical standards for themselves. So, or they expected us to uphold these high ethical standards. So that told me that they really didn't mean it, and led me to not like them very much.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point and a good example. So for the audience, we're curious, if you've experienced this sort of poor leadership, what was the impact when a leader did not lead by example? Can you think of some of the negatives? From an earlier comment, I think it's very, demotivating for the team, right? If you don't walk your talk. If the leader says one thing and doesn't follow that example, it can be very demotivating. Any other negatives that you're aware of when leaders are not leading by example, just enter that information into the chat window.
Okay, well, while they're doing that, I want to move on to the next area, which is clarity, which is defining your key results areas and setting clear standards of performance. And one of the things that we talk about in coaching and in Focal Point is objective metrics. And so, of course, in business, you're driven by lots of different things, and people have to understand what the most important thing they do is. So is it sales, customer service, quality, productivity, innovation, growth? Julie, I think we've got a poll that needs to go up while I'm talking about this. But they're drawn in many different directions. And I still want you to focus on what's the one thing that you do that is not negotiable, right, and not delegatable to other people. So we'll give you a few seconds.
Yeah, we'll just wait a few seconds. So if you'll answer the poll, you should all see that window. What is that most important thing that you're doing?
And I know I've always had a struggle with trying to know the thing that I was most accountable for, because you've got sales and you've got service, and I've come from a background where innovation was important, and how do I balance all of that? Good deal. So a couple people quality, a couple people growth, innovation, sales. Yeah, those are really good choices. And again, it's all personal in what you do, but it's that thing that becomes your key result area. So to me, you have to say, what is the thing I'm accountable for? What is the thing I should be measuring about myself and my own personal performance? And then we can take it down to your staff, where we talk about setting clear standards of performance. And if you think of this like a dashboard, like in an airplane, and you can always evaluate where you are and how you're doing based on the gauges of the the dashboard in an airplane. So one of the challenges I face with my clients is getting them to want to measure results objectively. That means I want them to put numbers on the table for what they expect employees to do. Now, in sales, generally, it's pretty easy. It's quota. But let's suppose you're in a customer service role. Are you guys doing net promoter score? Are you talking about time to close tickets? Whatever it is, you have to think about what the person is responsible for and how you measure results objectively. Now, that comes into real important, because employees have to know how they impact the bottom line, right? How they impact the bottom line, how do they deliver value to the business? And a question I like to put out in leadership training is, why are you on the payroll? Now, what I've found, my experience is that employees and managers often disagree on why they're on the payroll. And one of the things that causes is that, there's mismatch expectations. I did a leadership training earlier this summer, and the bookkeeper of the company said she was responsible for making sure everybody was happy because she was kind of the office mom. And the CEO said, no, you're accountable to get the books right. And that kind of mismatch means her view of her job and his view of her job are very different. And again, we're talking about how you get everybody to do the thing that you want them to do so that all the jobs are covered and everybody's doing the right thing. So how do you measure results objectively? How do you understand how people are impacting the bottom line? Making sure that you and they are clear on why they're on the payroll. And one of the things I also find is whenever I ask that question, the conversation stops almost all the time. They don't really want to say why they're on the payroll, or they're not 100% sure. And I think without that kind of objective, measurable, straightforward conversation, then people get confused about what they should do. Now, there's a comment up there that everybody fails. Yes and no. I mean, you should set their goals and objectives to something that's very close to a stretch goal. But if you don't set objectives, then how do you know that everybody's performance is going to add up to a result that meets what you need in your business plan? Right? That's the whole purpose of this, is you start from the top and you work your way down so that everybody eventually knows what percentage of the business plan they're accountable for.
Yeah, I think part of that comment was also about what happens when leaders aren't leading by example, not necessarily the specific point.
Okay, well, interesting. Okay, so if you haven't ever heard of SMART goals, we're going to cover that now. Because you need to make sure that when you give goals, they're SMART goals. And I'm going to walk through the different elements of SMART, and then I'm going to give you a couple examples and some ways to think about it. So the first part is specific. So just like any other thing in business, being specific, being direct, not being fuzzy about a goal. And that means it's measurable. So if you've got a goal and it's not measurable, it's not really a goal. It's sort of a belief or an idea. Aligned with your values, or tied to the way that you want to do business. So it's got to be in line with what you're doing. Realistic, and this is one that's tough for people. Is it a stretch goal? Should you be setting stretch goals? The answer is yes. You don't want to make goals so unrealistic that they're unattainable, because people just turn off and quit working on them. But you don't want to set them so easy to obtain that essentially they just have to fall out of bed in the morning and it all happens. So somewhere you got to make it a tough goal to meet, but not impossible. And then finally, time bound, which means it's got to have a time on it. And a really simple example that meets these criteria both negatively and positively. So an negative example is, I'd like to lose weight. A much more positive example is, I will lose 20 pounds by Christmas. And you can see how they're different. There's no way to know whether I'm going to lose weight is going to succeed, or how well you're doing against it. When you say I will lose 20 pounds by Christmas, number one, it's action that you're going to take, I will, and then you put this in a positive statement instead of a negative statement. So you make it I will, and then you put the measurement, the time, a goal, all in front of you, and you encapsulate that. And from that, you should be able to say, therefore, I need to lose a pound a week or half a pound a week to be able to make my goal of losing, this amount of weight by Christmas. And that is a much better goal for people. Now, one of the reasons people choose not to make SMART goals is they don't like to fail. And so if you set up a goal that's specific, measurable, realistic, aligned with your values, and time bounded, they can miss the goal. So that kind of failure really creates a problem for people. They don't like to have negativity. So when you find loose goals, or you find things that are very fuzzy, that's often why they're not sure if they're going to succeed, so they make it fuzzy for themselves. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't help drive behavior and action. So now we're going to move on to number 5 and number 6, which is efficiency, and how you make your life more effective. And one of the pithy statements I like to use about business and efficiency is that business is the efficient conversion of time into money. And if you think about that, you'll find that it's true no matter what kind of business you're in. The most obvious of a business, like being a lawyer, you're selling your time, so you're directly converting time into money. But even a product company, which is manufacturing thing, it's all about how much time is put in to deliver a product, because that's going to affect the cost the most. So time is the key element to building an effective business. So we've moved now from, hey, here's what I'm about, here's what a leader has to do, to two, how do you set up and measure people and be an objective about how they do things, and three, the next thing is, how do they deal with and create time to be able to meet those objectives so they can become exceptional. So concentrate your focus. One of the toughest challenges is making sure that you are working on things that you are really responsible for. And number one, what tasks create results? I worked earlier this year with a professor, actually, in the local junior college, and he was struggling with his workload. He took all his hours that he had assigned to tasks. He actually went through a time study and figured out that he would have to work, 70 hours a week to do all those tasks. And the first question I had from him, and I said, which of those tasks require you? Some of those really didn't require him, and we found ways to delegate them to students or other staff in the university so that he could get those off his plate. And then I started making him make tough choices. Is it more important for you to develop new curriculum? Is it more, he was a department head, so he had outside business involvement. Is it more important to engage with your local businesses? What about your students? What is your priorities? And back to, what are you responsible for, and what are you actually accountable for? What are those tasks that create results, that drive the SMART goals, so that you become effective? And I hope you can see how this lines up. What tasks are in the way? So again, with this professor, a lot of it was basic, administrative and day-to-day activities that he was not really needed for. It really didn't require him personally. It required somebody to do it. And so we had to find, because he's on a limited budget, we had to find low-cost ways for him to satisfy those tasks without requiring his personal time and attention, because that was the core element of what he's delivering. And I want you to think about that for a second. That's a professor who's really, going to get paid one way or the other, and he's struggling with time management. I know in business you have all the stuff you have to do, and really, what is the thing that's going to create results, and how do you get things out of the way that don't create results? And we're going to talk about that. And then finally, you need to be asking yourself this question all the time. What's the highest value task you can do now? I have a lot of clients or prospects or friends sometimes that are in small businesses, and they feel stuck. Like they can't close the next deal, that their revenue's stuck at a certain level. And that causes a cycle of depression where, they get frustrated and they're unable to grow their business. And so they have a very negative outlook, and it's sort of this rut that continues. And I ask them to go through what I call the first hour method. And the first hour method is, they give me the first hour of every day. And the first thing I try to do is get them to do goals for the day, the things I got to accomplish today. So what are those high value tasks you can do today, right? The second one is, I ask them to do an affirmation. And back to the thinking and how your thoughts create your outcomes, I want them to have a good mindset. And then the third thing is, I want them to do the thing that's the hardest for them to accomplish, or the most hardest in terms of creates the most results. It's the biggest nut to crack for most people. That's prospecting. So I asked them to give me the first hour in prospecting. And I ask them to do this for 3 weeks. And the reason I do 3 weeks is there's a psychological studies that show if you do something over and over again for 3 weeks, it becomes a routine. And once that becomes routine and they're doing that hard thing all the time that kind of they need to get out of the way and they need to get through, then they make it something that's normal part of their activity. It grows their business. They become more successful again. Things start happening, and it becomes a positive cycle instead of the negative cycle it was before. Now, the one thing I ask them to avoid, we'll get to on the next slide, which is, the slide after this. So if you've not seen this before, it's called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. And so in almost anything associated with business, 20% of what's going on creates 80% of the results. So in terms of activities, you need to be thinking about what are the 20% of the activities that bring 80% of the results. So if you think about it in terms of hours a day, that if you got 8 hours in a standard day, really 2 of those hours you're probably the most productive, doing the most productive thing, and the other 6 you're not. So the question is, if you look at that other 6, what is it that you can get out of your results? Now, this 80-20 rule works for employees. 20% of your employees are most productive. It's customers. They generate the most sales. Products, the 20% of your products generate 80% of the revenue. It works in many different ways. And again, it's not exactly 80 and it's not exactly 20. It could be 15 and 75. But it's the vast majority comes from a very small sample size. And that is very helpful in thinking about your time. What is it? What are those 20% that actually drive results in your business? That's something that's very key to go through. Now, so if you're going to leverage your effectiveness, I'm sure you need to be productive. I'm sure you've heard the Big Rocks story, which is professor has a big bowl on his desk, and he's got sand, he's got small pebbles, he's got large pebbles, and he's got stones, bigger stones on his desk. And he asked the students which ones he should put in first. And if they start with the sand, of course, you fill the entire bowl with the sand and nothing else fits. If you start with the big rocks go in, and then the large pebbles can fit in some of the cracks, and then the small pebbles can fit in some of the cracks still left, and then the sand fills it up. So if you don't address the big things, the most important things you need to do in your business first, you will only focus on the small things and not make progress. So you need to focus on the big things first. That's why it's big rocks first, very similar to what I teach them in the first hour method. So what can you get rid of? There's a couple of techniques. One I use for people that from the Covey kind of urgent important matrix. A lot of people have customer service responsibility, even though they don't realize it. So a general contractor client of mine had as things happen weather-wise and with materials and staffing, projects have to change. Well, one of the things I helped him do was set up a method of communicating with his clients so they weren't always calling him for status updates. So that he was proactively calling them with status changes, with changes to the order of the project so that they knew what was going on. And the big advantage for him was they were calling him on their schedule and interrupting activities that he had going on. And it moved to he's contacting them on his schedule when he's planned and he set time aside to contact them. So there's a much lower task switching kind of friction that happens. And because of that, he became much more productive. People liked the fact that he communicated with them with any changes. They knew when he would be available. They knew how to, when he would be contacting him and giving him updates. It was very helpful in making his business much more efficient. Block scheduling is something that I recommend to a lot of people, which is setting aside time on your schedule in blocks of time pre-setting it. So if you know you need to set a task, do something every week, put it on your schedule, especially if it's something you don't like, because then it can't be interrupted. Because one of the things that's really easy to do is to take one of those tasks and delay it by allowing other lower priority things to interrupt it, right? So if you really don't like doing something, you'll push it off with almost any excuse. And if you set up a schedule ahead of time, then people won't schedule your time in meetings to be able to go do that. And eliminate distractions. The biggest killer in the modern world, email and social media. So ask yourself, how many business hours do I spend on either email or social media? If you want to get your time back, that's the number one place to start. How can I reduce my email load? How can I reduce my social media role? Now, for a leader in a larger organization that I worked with, she was CC'd on many emails, stuff that had nothing to do with her. They just filled her inbox. And I said, well, and they were using the Microsoft tools, and Outlook has an engine that says, if then, have all kinds of if thens. And I said, if you're CC'd on an email chain, you can of course put that in your CC folder, have it automated so when it comes in, so that you only respond to emails that are directly sent to you. And then tell people that if they don't send the email to you directly, you're not going to look at it unless you have extra time. So it's that kind of stuff where you can take action to lower the amount of time spent in electronic media. It's easy to get sucked in and easy to spend hours. And really importantly, it's easy to spend those little filler times into something that, instead of something that's much more important. If you've got an extra 15 minutes, let me just go check Facebook. Let me just go check my email, right? When there's probably something much more productive that you can do at that exact moment. So back to my comment about how do you make sure you're doing the most important task on an ongoing basis? Well, that's one of them. So again, focus on how you can lower your email and social media time during business hours.
Yeah. Hey, Jim. Thanks for those points. And I was just thinking many of our audience members are leaders. And I think what happens certainly in larger organizations is you're a really productive, effective employee, and then you're promoted to be a manager. Mm-hmm. And we have a natural tendency to want to keep doing all that same stuff and then add the management on top of it. And it can be difficult to let go, but this kind of segues into the next piece. But part of it is, as managers, we're used to doing the problem solving for our employees, and we need to release ourselves and actually empower them to do that. And it's a difficult thing to do, but it's something we also have to recognize in ourselves. Is we like to do what's comfortable and what we're good at, and sometimes we avoid the big rocks, the harder things.
Well, and Julie, one of the things you and I both do is we teach people how to coach their employees. That's always a fun exercise. I know we're both familiar with that. Okay, so delegation, and I'm going to talk a lot about delegation in a particular style, but one of the things I want to do is ask you a question. And we're going to answer it after the next slide, not right now, but we're going to answer this question, or I'm going to give you my answer to it, which is, why do managers get paid more money, right? So if you get promoted into a managerial role, or you get promoted to a higher managerial role, you get paid more money than a line employee. So why do you think that is? So I'd love for you to answer that in the chat window. I think it's a critical question, and deals a lot with what Julie was just talking about, is that transition from employee and frontline employee to management. So delegation, and delegation is one of the things that happens. The reason I chose this picture is I like to use the trust management, model of delegation. And so this is a trust fall. The first and most important thing in delegation is you need to tell people how you want them to make decisions. Now, what do I mean by that? You know, every employee, and you've done it as well, you make hundreds or thousands of choices every day. Do I do it this way? Do I do it that way? Do I optimize the company's bottom line or the customer's service? I mean, some of them are pretty small choices and they're easy to make. Some of them are tougher and tougher calls. The problem that I see with most managers is they do one of two things. They start off in micromanagement and they stay with it. Or two, they basically say, go do whatever, a task, and then never come back and really manage it. So what I want to impart to you is this notion of, over time, as your employees build trust with you, they should be having higher and higher levels of delegation. So you start with a form of micromanagement, which I call, instead of calling it micromanagement, I say, I want you to have clear choices and small choices. So the way I tell a lot of people about this, I was talking to a magazine publisher about this the other day, is black and white, that there's no gray decision that they have to make, right? It's either A or it's B, and if it's not A or B, then it's an escalation to me, right? That's what I mean by black and white decisions, because then you can work with the employee as those decisions are being made, so they can see how you make them on an ongoing basis. And as long as you're aligned with your mission, vision, and values, and you repeat that, and you're leading by example, then you will see your employees able to understand how you make decisions in real time with the whole objective of the task. So the second kind is management by objective, which is, I want you to achieve a goal. You know, here's the goal I want you to achieve. Let me know if you need help along the way. You may have some standard check-ins along the way. Let me know when you've achieved this milestone, that milestone. But your goal is, instead of assigning to them task, you've assigned them objective, and there's some bigger tasks along the way. Okay. The third one is management by exception. And management by exception is pretty simple. It's, I want to only know about a task when something's gone wrong. So if there's something's gone wrong, the task is going to slip, or the quality's not going to be as good, or it's going to cost more, then please let me know. So that's the basic spectrum, all the way from task at a time or subtask at a time with clear black and white decisions to tell me when something's gone wrong. So I want to remind you that this is all about creating alignment. So your decisions should align with, and how you have people make decisions should align with, your mission, vision, and values, how you make decisions. And even if it doesn't align with your corporate mission, vision, and values, or those aren't stated, then you should have one for your group or your sub-organization within the larger company. So creating alignment, to me, is the key to productivity. Everybody pulling in the same direction. So if you remember this question, and we've had at least a couple of good answers on that, why do managers get paid more money? To me, it's pretty simple. They improve the entire group. The whole purpose of a leader and a manager is to make everyone around them better. That's the point, right? If you were, and I came out of technology, so I always think of it as code. So if you write code, the way you get promoted as a software engineer is essentially you write better code, faster code, more code, right? It's all about the productivity in terms of quality, bug-free lines of code in any given interval. If you're a leader and you are no longer writing code, then how are you adding productivity? Well, you're allowing everybody else to be more productive. And how do you do that? You make sure their schedules are clean. They understand what their objectives are, that they're not working at cross purposes with the rest of the organization, that the rest of the organization understands what they need from your group and what you're going to deliver to them, right? So that you've set up clear standards of performance so people know what your expectations of them are, and that you measure those. That's how you make everybody around you better, right? So that's why managers get paid more money. It's not it's otherwise they should get actually paid less money, right? Because they don't deliver product, they don't deliver the service, they simply make sure everybody else does. But the way they do that should be to make everybody around them better. Hope that makes sense to everybody out there. But that's why you should get paid more money. Okay. So I've gone over this a couple of times in different ways. This is the law of self-control. It's a Brian Tracy special, and as you know, we love Brian here at Focal Point. Your self-talk, what you think about, how you think about it, leads to how you feel and what you believe you can do. Back to Henry Ford's statement, if you don't believe you can, you won't, right? So you have to remind yourself that you can, right? So you guys can be great leaders. You can improve as managers. You can be exceptional. Everybody can. They have to believe they can. Now, maybe they can't be the world's greatest, but they can be really good at what they do. Those beliefs lead to actions. So if you are going to create a winning organization and you need to do A, B, and C, then you're going to, if you believe you will create a winning organization, then you will take those actions, right? If you don't, then you're not. Things will stop. You won't go to do what you need to do to accomplish on your tasks. And finally, once you've taken the actions that are part of your beliefs, you will win. Now, maybe you won't win exactly the way you thought you were going to win, but if you keep at it, keep your plans, adjust to the conditions as you find them, you will succeed in ways that you cannot imagine. It is extraordinarily important that you understand that you can win and that you're going to win and that your action plans are winning action plans. They're just not failing action plans. Because really what people miss is that most plans aren't I will fail. It's that most plans are I won't win, but I won't fail. I'll maintain status quo. And if you want to create a winning plan, that means you're going to take risks. And if you remember, I said you got to have courage to take risks. That's how you create a winning plan, is you take risks. You have courage to try to win, because it takes courage to do that. So I want to remind you of the 7 secrets that we had. And you can see how I hope you can see how they all tie together. If you're an exceptional person, then and you lead by example, then you set a standard of performance in your organization. But you need to make sure and you understand what that key thing, those key things that you execute on are, and you tell people what their standard that they're going to meet in quite clear format is going to be. Then you're going to focus your time and your energy on the things that you need to accomplish. You're going to make sure that it's super efficient in the way you go about it, and that you're going to leverage your time and only work on the most important things. And then finally, you're going to make sure that when you assign tasks to others, that it's done effectively, that they understand what they're going to accomplish and you know what you're going to get from them. So I think we have a poll at this point, which is which one of these will get you to the biggest, fastest success. We'll give you a few seconds to answer.
All right, we've got just about 80% have voted, a little higher. Great. Thank you all for thinking about these 7 secrets and how you can have a bigger impact in your role. Let's go ahead and end the polling.
It's very cool. Leading by example leads the way. Interesting. Very interesting. And setting clear standards of performance. Yeah, you know, one of the things I find is all of these things have some level of impact. And I think being clear leaders, walking the talk, setting clarity, and then delegation's always a toughie, as well as making sure you've got good time management. So here's the thing, right? You've been here, you've answered questions, you've listened to what I've got to say. You need to take action to make this work for you, because without action, there is no change. So if you want to become a better leader, you need to change, right? You need to improve, you need to get better. So one of the things you can do is, if you haven't already done, complete the self-assessment, and there's the URL for the self-assessment, right? And then schedule a free leadership review and action planning session. We really like to work with you on what that is. Help work with each and every one of you to make sure that you can take advantage of the skills, the things you've learned, the gaps that you understand, and create an action plan to go close those and make yourself better. And a special offer for the participants only. We'd love for you to go schedule that. There's a URL that Julie's just shared in the chat window that you can go to and book before the end of the month. There's a free 30-minute session you can add there. And I think that's it. Is that it, Julie?
Yeah, and we'll be using the assessment in that conversation. So, some of you shared in the poll where you think you can have the biggest impact. And when you complete the assessment, you'll also see maybe what is your weakest area. And our goal when we have our consultation with you is to help you get some clarity around what's that big rock or what's that big issue, and create an action plan for you to succeed and help you take action to make the change that you want to see.
Great. The other thing I think we're going to offer for the first 10 people is we've got some communication skills. The first 10 people that sign up, we're going to offer them some communication skills to help improve their leadership style and understand how to work with those around them in a more effective way. So, go ahead and make it, get out there and sign up. It doesn't cost you anything, and it'll be, we think, of great value for you.
Yeah, and of course, we've got limited time slots for these appointments, so the sooner you go in and schedule your time with us, the more likely our schedule will mesh with yours, and we can provide that consultation. This is also the first in a series of leadership training webinars we'll be doing, so stay tuned. We'll be sending some more emails to let you know about other issues. We've had a lot of interest in the different blog posts that we've shared, things around managing millennials, being more strategic as a leader. These are some of the topics we'll be covering in the coming weeks, and we certainly look forward to working with you. There will be an email that goes out after the event with a link to view the recording. Those of you that would be interested in signing up for the consultation with us, we can also provide you with the slides if you want to use certain elements of them for your own team, or whether you're managing up or what have you. So we really encourage you to go ahead and follow our link and set up that appointment. Complete your self-assessment if you haven't done that already. You'll get an email that gives you a score, and then you would share that with your coach during the consultation so that we can really hone in and make that 30-minute block of time really effective for you to help you come out with some concrete action steps to improve in your leadership skills.
Excellent. So,
any other questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat window. We have a couple more moments where we'll be on the line here, so we encourage you to, any comments you had or other topics you would be interested in, certainly would be interested to hear what you have to say.
And one of the things I want to do is I really love to thank you guys for all your participation and your attendance here. We're here to help and work with people. And if you have any questions, feel free, you'll get an email after this. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help you as necessary. Or as you need. So I really like to take myself and Julie would love to love to thank you, and hope you guys all have a great day.
Yep, and if there's no further comments, we appreciate your time and respect your time as well. So we will pause our recording and oh, we have